Okay, it looks like we have Patrick and Ellen, and so they are going to be basically, I am going to be grilling them a bit in
I'm
the course
terrified.
of our session. So I want to send out thanks to both of them first of all for taking the time to do this and for being so generous with their time, not only now but in general. My name, for those of you that we have not met, I am Jill Cizek. I work directly for Dr. Bashir in the hat that she wears on campus as Vice President for Health Sciences, not specifically the Jacobs School of Medicine. And my colleagues and I basically are focused on primarily helping investigators across all the health science schools at UB grow research. And I work with all of your deans to make sure that we're giving them as many tools as they possibly can and being strategic, and then also helping investigators at an individual level, especially if you're going after more significant funding opportunities. So part of this series is we've actually done a number of different talks over the course of a year, actually more than 30 in the last year and a half, that are really here to provide you with some information on some of the tools and the resources that are here at UB that you may be less familiar with. And so Ellen Goldbaum is with us and Patrick Broadwater, and both of them are leading in different communications aspects for UB when it comes to scientific communications and specifically the Jacobs School, and then also the health sciences. And they are here and they assist us in so many different ways. Our office in particular has worked with them when it comes to enhancing the visibility and communications that are going out for major awards that have come to the university. A perfect example is recently the CTSA renewal that came up just a month or so ago that was announced with a press conference. That is a very complex and well orchestrated event when they put things like that together. They also help us from an office level and also an investigator level try and maximize the impact of your research. It's amazing when research goes out and goes into a top tier journal or publication, but the sad part is that if it only stays within that professional organization or that specific discipline's publication and it doesn't make it out to a general audience. And so they help investigators interpret so that some of the work that they do and the impact of what they're doing can actually make it out into a general audience. And so we can find additional support and people can understand the impacts of everything that everybody's doing here. And then they engage for us on a million different levels when it comes to media. Another perfect example is everybody was all hands on deck about 2 weeks ago when Senator Gillibrand came to UB to talk about the potential and the proposed indirect reductions that are being considered at NIH. And so they do a ton of different things. They help us build relationships. And all of those things ultimately at the end of the day, and I'm confident when I say this, is the visibility that they give each of us and the school and the university really does help us secure additional awards. I'm 100% confident in that because having the reputation and the credibility of UB out there and have been verified and having them do it so professionally really does have a positive impact on all of us. So with that said, that's my 2 cents on it. But I just wanted to bring them here today. And Ellen, I think I'll go to you with the first question if that works for you.
Sure.
But can you tell our investigators, and we are recording this so that we can share it afterward, why it's helpful and why they should bother working with communications and media, and what is the end result for them when they work with you?
Okay, so yeah, thanks. And thank you so much for everything you said. Really appreciate it. You guys are great partners. Um, so I want to get to that in a minute, sort of like the overall picture,
Mhm.
and related to sort of the research that all of you do and how talking about your research and getting that information out to the public is important. But I just wanted to add this sort of like little blurb thing up front because So the biggest news story, of course, right now is everything that's happening in Washington, and it directly affects everyone who's federally funded. And sometimes the media reporters will call you as a federally funded researcher. In those cases, that's when you really need to call university communications, which is where I work, which is the university's communications office. You can also let um, your unit communicator know. Like, for example, Patrick is the director of communications in the Jacob School. So if you're in the Jacob School, you would probably want to let Patrick know as well. But we would ask you that if you get a call like that where they say, "Hi, I'm so and so from the Washington Post or the Buffalo News or Channel 2," we wanted to just find out what you thought about some of the funding cuts. And they really do want to speak to investigators. That would be the time when we would appreciate it if you would say, "Thanks for the call. I'll get back to you," and then immediately forward the information to us so we can figure out how to respond. The responses that point would probably be more of a university response than an individual response. That's also just something else I thought I should mention, that when you do talk to reporters, um, and this won't be an issue, if usually isn't an issue if you're talking about your own research, but nothing is really off the record anymore. So from the time you pick up the phone, it's fair game. So just wanted to let you know about that. Okay, that's sort of like the not very pleasant news. Okay, the pleasant news. Um, so the reason to sort of talk to us and give us information on your stories and your research and your papers when they're coming out is that people don't support things that they don't know about. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that the really great stuff that's going on here is not going unnoticed. As Jill said, we want it to be visible, we want it to be out there, because that not only helps UB's reputation, the reputation of your department, of your school, it also sort of helps UB's reputation locally and nationally. And just it's interesting, just getting sort of a mention in a national publication can really, people do notice, and it's always a positive thing when. When your research is being elevated, as Jill mentioned, like outside of um, just your own academic community, and then it goes outside of the university. Also, having said that, I just wanted to mention that, getting when we do a news release or a story and we put it on a bunch of different websites, you put it in News Center, and it goes also into UB Now, um, which is the UB's digital news outlet. Your peers see it too, and that's also important. So, I mean, those things can lead to additional funding opportunities. Sometimes national or even local media stuff can be included in tenure and promotion materials. I mean, it does happen. It's just really good to get your story out there and to sort of also give you a way to talk to the public about, you know, not all the information that's in the paper you just published, but here's why it matters to you. That's what we want to help you do.
Thank you. And so with that, can you give us some examples of what they like you mentioned, if somebody is going to reach out to you, let's say from the Wall Street Journal, then people need to reach out to you and contact you. But in being proactive instead of reactive, if they have something that's going to go into a top tier journal, or can you give us some examples of when they should be reaching out?
Yeah. Great. Yes, really important. If you can let us know, um, as soon as the paper gets accepted, and obviously you probably won't have a publication date at that point, but if you can let us know as soon as the paper is accepted, and then right at that point, share the paper with us, even though we understand that there might be revisions between that time and the time it gets published. That will give us an opportunity to talk to you, to interview you, to write the story, and also then to consider, do we need photos? Would this be um, possibly something that's very visual? Do we want to do a quick video, maybe to also share on social media? It gives us time to get everything together and have, sort of put our best foot forward in terms of explaining everything about your research and why it's important. And also there's always, you want to review it. Everything that we do gets reviewed by you, so we don't send anything out without you reviewing it. And lots of times there's lots of there's many versions, which makes sense because you are the expert and you need to make sure it's accurate. At the same time, we want to make sure that it's not. We want to make sure that we're saying the best things we can about your research. So, and in terms of so I know sometimes so you get these notices that say congratulations, your paper's going to be published, and it says, don't, it's embargoed, which means don't share it with anybody. And it can't, nothing can be published about it until we say that it's published. But you can share it with me. You can share it with me and with whoever your communicator is, because that's an internal sharing, and we're not going to publicize it anywhere. In fact, some of the journals, such as like Science, Nature, JAMA, some of the really big ones, they will also let you know, okay, if your institution is doing a news release, you guys can prepare your release, and they will also be reaching out to media because they want reporters to cover what's being published in their journal. So they will reach out to trusted journalists like a few days before. They will circulate, these are some of the abstracts and things that are going to be in the next issue. And at that point, we also can share it under embargo, which means the reporter promises not to publish anything until the publication date that the journal has set, date and time, actually. So just wanted to let you know about the timing on that.
So can you just I think we had two really great recent examples of that, but it wasn't actually in regards to a paper. It was actually in regards to some awards that were coming in. So Dr. Murphy's had a date that nothing could be shared prior to, that there was a lot of chatter and conversation on campus for planning to come out with a press conference. And then I think we did the same thing, and your team did an amazing job when Dr. Markatu secured her most recent PCORI award. Um, and the PCORI, they gave us a date that no announcements could be made up until, but PCORI as a funding agency actually loves the attention when
Mhm.
schools are participating with them. So, other than papers, can people reach out to you if they have a grant that they think will be significant for their field?
Yes, of course. It's not just papers. And I should have said that. Yeah, for sure. It's grants, awards, things that are especially prestigious. We want to know about all of that. And it takes different forms. I know that Patrick always encourages people to submit whatever you have, because even if it doesn't turn out to be a full-fledged news release, I mean, it may, but even it doesn't, it could be a story in UB Now. It could be a story for your school's website. It could be something to put on social media. Maybe it's an event that we really want to talk up. For sure, there's lots of reasons why you might want to get in touch with us. And I also wanted to say that if you go to News Center, so it's buffalo.edu/news, that's where the news releases are, and then also buffalo.edu/UB Now, just to get a sense of like all the different things. Like, in the School of Dental Medicine, they do give kids a smile day. So every year, and that's like, it's a great event. There's kids, which is like great for media, so the media almost always covers that. The really good resonant message is UB's doing these things for the community. And there's so many things that are being done. It's probably impossible to cover all of them, but we really want to get as much as we can out there because it really adds to, um, it really improves the reputation of the institution.
Thanks. So, what about the exact opposite when um, reporters or news agencies come to you? Like, why would they be interested in talking to faculty? Because I would imagine that you get a good number of requests for experts on this or that. Or, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, and especially in the health sciences. I would just say we get a lot of requests from all kinds of, um, whether it's local media or often it's national media or sometimes international media. So they, I mean, the big example is Tom Russo during the during the pandemic. He just became he became sort of the go-to infectious disease expert. And I think also because he has a knack for explaining things in very simple terms and kind of quickly. And so the media, that's the thing with the media, like they may contact you and say, but I need to hear from you in the next 4 hours, or I need to hear from you by tomorrow morning. Obviously, sometimes that's not possible. You have other um, obligations, but if you can do it, it becomes very rewarding because you are out there being able to explain. I'm sure you get frustrated when you hear stories about your field on TV and you think, "Oh my God, they got it totally wrong," you know. And it's like this is your opportunity to get out there and to sort of say, um, to explain it in the way an expert should explain it with your background. So that really helps. We do get a lot of requests, and we also try to keep updating our experts list, which is also on the News Center website. And so we're always trying to get more and more people on there, and reporters do review those things. So we will hear from reporters that we maybe have never worked with before, and they'll say, "I saw your experts list. Do you think I could talk to Dr. Levy or Dr. Rousseau or Dr. Leslie or, Dr. Bashir?" It's just they see because we put a blurb on about what your expertise is, what you're willing to talk to media about. And if they have something that's related, that cuts down a lot of their work. They don't, you know what I mean? They can sometimes come to us and say, "I'm not really sure who this would be good for. Do you have anybody who could talk about this disease or condition?" And then we can help them, and that also helps us build a relationship with media when we have a story we want to pitch to them. So that all of that works together.
Patrick, I saw you took mute off.
Yeah, if I may just add to that real quickly, I think it goes back to the visibility point that Ellen was making earlier that why get your stories out there? I think a lot of times also reporters will just Google, right? If they have a subject that they're working on and they're working on a story, and having your work out there, even if it's a press release or if it's picked up by the media or if it's done on a school website, that all lives out there in the universe for people to find. And when reporters specifically go looking, they'll I know this has happened on multiple occasions. They'll say, "We found this article from 2019, and is so and so still working on that project? Are they still working in that area? Would they be willing to speak about this?" So that's just another reason to make sure that you're kind of proactive in terms of your outreach to us and to university communications, because those stories do have a long lifespan and they are very helpful for not only connecting with reporters, but I would also add connecting with possible collaborators. The other thing that we hear from time to time is that so and so found their work online and didn't realize somebody else was in their field doing the same thing, or hadn't realized somebody in Buffalo was doing the same thing that they were doing. And this is just another opportunity for the people to find out about those things.
Can either of you just comment? Um, Actually, it's kind of funny. Can either of you comment quickly and briefly on timing? Like when you get a request, I know that sometimes the articles that are going out, they can be weeks in planning and you're back and forth with somebody. But then on other instances, like I've seen you have to respond to something if you really want to be front and center. And as we all like to say, above the fold, on the Saturday or Sunday, like what's the timing on sometimes and how critical is that?
Um, I'll just say a few things on our end from we've done a couple things where we've turned things around in a day or less. That's not our preferred speed. And we've got lots of things on our plate, and sometimes but things arise and it demands immediate attention, and we're able to occasionally push things out very, very quickly. Other times, I think, you refer to press conferences and things like that. Those are weeks in the making, if not sometimes months. And just knowing, as Ellen said, that big projects or papers are in the works gives us that extra time we need to help address that and come up with a plan for how best to promote it.
Yeah, agreed. And then just the question on the other side about, media contacting you for as an expert. So their deadline is all important. And like I said, if it's not possible to make it, that's understandable. Totally. But if it's possible for you to try and respond to something that's, definitely within your field that you can definitely talk about, it can be worth it. And it doesn't take usually as long. A lot of times they're talking about a condition that's in the news or a disease that's in the news, and they just need someone to provide like an explainer, and that can go a really long way. And usually it doesn't take you that long because you are the expert. So you can talk about it fairly briefly, and then they get their soundbite and they're happy.
Ellen, you said something a couple of minutes ago that resonated with me. You said sometimes our faculty would have a chance to comment on something if they see something written in the newspaper and say, oh my gosh, you got it all wrong. And frankly, for me as a research administrator, every time I read the newspaper right now, I'm like, oh my gosh, you got it all wrong.
Yeah.
It's making me a little crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm, trying to educate family and friends and everybody about the work that our faculty do, to help our communities and our society. And I guess I would just say, what happens if somebody has opinions about things or they feel very strongly about something and they want to share their opinion or their perspective? How do you go about, could you engage in an op-ed? Is it generally something not preferred? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. That's a great question. Thank you. And you remind me that I didn't say anything about misinformation, which I will say at the end of this. But yeah, if there's like a debate going on in your field, or there's something that's, in the news, I mean, just recently, so I think, things like bird flu or raw milk issues, vaccinations, I mean, a lot of these things are controversial. I'm not saying they're not, but there is a way to get your expertise out there with obviously without being controversial, and sometimes an op-ed is a great way to do it. For example, and we would certainly love to work with you on op-eds. We know the person at the Buffalo News, for example. She's always looking. She has sometimes certain topics that she's looking for, but we have also had people submit things to her that she has just used almost as is. I think we had a resident and um, a professor, faculty member in pediatrics, and they just wanted to get the word out about RSV at the beginning of the season, that things, this is what you need to watch out for. And that worked out really well. That was a great way to sort of give parents an idea of, this is what you should watch out for if you have a young child who has certain kind of symptoms. And then also there's something called theconversation.com, which we also participate in. And so if you work for UB and you are a faculty member, or I think also PhD candidates who are under supervision can also submit stories. Those are slightly less opinionated, but more heavy on like information and clearing up things that might be out there that are incorrect. Or that haven't come to light. And so theconversation.com is the website to go to. And I think there's also a tab that says become an author, and it tells you how to do that. They work with you really closely, the editors there. And so if it's something that's topical, sometimes they actually will contact us and say, we need an expert on X. And they work very quickly. People say it's challenging but rewarding, the words that they use. But those go into national publications. I mean, they go into Time, Newsweek, um, Washington Post. Those op-eds can go everywhere. So there's one more way you can get your perspective out there. Sometimes we do something called the tip sheet, where it's like the Q&A. Like we ask you questions like, why is there an outbreak of measles in Texas? Should we be worried in New York State? Mark Hykar in pediatrics just did this on Channel 2 yesterday. But but there are sometimes we will send something out in general to media to say we have an expert who can really, who would be really good if you're covering this, which obviously everybody is. So that's another thing. But if I just to mention about misinformation, obviously there's more and more out there, and that an op-ed or a tip sheet or something like that, or even just talking to the media can be a great way for you to actually make a difference and say, setting the record straight. this is what the truth is. I'm an expert. I'm a pediatrician. I'm a pulmonologist with UB, and that carries a lot of weight. So we would appreciate that.
Well, we very much appreciate everything that you do. I feel like I've asked a lot of questions and I've been monopolizing the time. So can we throw it out to anybody who's online right now? Would anybody like to pose a question to either Patrick or Ellen? Something that you'd like clarification on?
Oh, I got one more thing to say. Sorry. Always have another thing to say. We do also offer media training. So that's another story. When people are, there is a way to talk to the media, and it's, as it's been explained, it's not really a conversation. It feels like a conversation, but an interview with a journalist is not really a conversation. So there are, um, it's sort of a different way of talking, especially for people who are academics. And so one of my colleagues, Bert Gambini, who worked for many years at WBFO as a reporter, now does a lot of media training with our faculty. He can do it in groups, he can do it one-on-one. And so that's always available if someone feels that they would like that. And I do recommend it because I would do it.
I think one of the things that's great about that, and I think I went through something similar years ago, is that so many agencies, and you're probably well aware of this, but so many agencies now require a public abstract or something that's written for a lay audience and not just a peer group within a specific discipline. And in working with you over the years and going through things like that, I think it really helps to understand how to approach those things to really, it's difficult for investigators at times to translate the work that they're doing into things that like my mom would understand and read at the end of the day with no science background whatsoever. So I think anytime any of us can do something like that, I think it's very, very useful. I wanted to share, Ellen, you sent earlier, and I'm digging for it right now. You sent an email with some links that you thought would be useful for everybody.
Yeah, just so on buffalo.edu/news, there is a tab on, I think it's called our
I'm going to put it
services.
in. I'm going to put it in.
Okay,
You can walk through them though if you
in the
want.
chat. Yeah, just because if you don't know who if you don't know who it is at University Communications who covers your school, that's the one that you just put up. That would be the way to find it. Just to find out who is the person in University Communications. And just to, maybe I should have reiterated, so University Communications in media relations, which is where I work, we focus on um, working with media outside of the university. We also write stories that appear in UB Now and on internal websites, but our focus is primarily external, whereas the communicators in your unit will focus on your school and your unit and maybe your website, maybe your alumni, but they're not focused on media. For media, you go to University Communications.
Patrick, anything that you wanted to add before we?
Just that, as senior communicators, we're here to assist as well with that. I mean, I always tell folks that, if you're not sure of who you need to speak to or who you should be talking to about a certain thing, feel free to come to us, and start the conversation. And if we are not the right place, we will direct you. It's our job to know who the right person is and to direct you to that person so we can get that straightened out and handled in the best possible way. Our office is glad to work with investigators and researchers and in many different ways and everything from web stories and web content, and things, social media. And then, we work closely with Ellen and University Communications on the media relations side. So very little happens in that realm that we're not aware of. So again, if there's something that you have a question about, you need answers, you need just some guidance, feel free to come to us as well.
And I
Yeah.
just would add one quick thing too. I know I talked about the federal funding. That's the story that's circulating right now. But if there's anything that comes up that, if you should be contacted by media on a topic that you weren't expecting, that you aren't really sure about or sounds like it could potentially maybe be a negative thing, don't hesitate to contact University Communications. That's the first, that should be, don't even feel like you have to answer the email. Just forward it to us and we can have a conversation about what should be done then.
I guess that probably is the last point. I mean, there are times where for all of the wonderful work that you do, in helping get the good word out about all of the efforts of our research teams and the programs and the grants that are flowing through, part of what you do is crisis communication to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yes.
so, the sooner that you have heads ups about things and are in the loop, probably the better, right?
Yeah. Yes. Agreed. Thank you for saying
Yes.
that. Agreed. Thank you.
So I want to just thank both of you. I think our teams are committed to supporting faculty and their research groups and the work that you do. Honestly, there is nothing, frankly, more exciting. Okay, first of all, notice of award. That's super exciting when we all find out that funding is coming through to support somebody's great work. But when you bring such great visibility to it and really give our research teams a chance to have a voice. It is so much appreciated. And I see what you guys do in the background, especially with all the cloak and dagger with like, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody. It's kind of, everybody's showing up this particular day, but it's very much appreciated for all the time that you invest and how well you represent and support everybody. So
Well, thank you. It's also,
you.
we're very lucky because we have great people that we work with and we love being able to work with researchers. So it's a two-way street. Thank you.